That's 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. Let's go. How about we, for those who are joining us tonight, welcome everyone for this Tuesday, May 11th, East Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Our chair, David Shuey, is in transit, and David will be with us in the Zoom chat format, but he will not visually be with us. He'll be on the telephone through the Zoom and tuning in. But so I'll take as the vice chair the call to order for this meeting and ask if we would stand and we'll pledge allegiance before the flag. I pledge allegiance for the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if I might, if we would have a moment of silence for our first responders, for our healthcare workers, and for all of those who are on the front line in our country doing the best that they can under very difficult circumstances. Our thoughts and prayers and meditations for a moment of silence with them. Okay, thank you, folks. The announcement that, of course, this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. The chair report is that the board met in executive session prior to this meeting tonight with our solicitor to discuss a judgment issued by the Common Pleas Court and personnel matters. And we also want to announce that Ken Lawrence has resigned from the Historical Committee, and that we'll be looking for citizens who are interested in filling that vacancy. And we'll probably have an announcement on the website. Rick, would that be proper to expect that we'll have an announcement on that?
It'll be updated tomorrow.
All right, very good. We have no public hearing scheduled for this evening. Emergency service reports, we do have some, and we have Chief Brenda Burnett with us from WeGo. Chief, good evening and nice to see you. What can you share with us tonight?
I'd like to begin this evening with a statistical recap of the last 30 days. During the last 30 days, there were 886 calls for service in all 3 townships served by the department. During the same time period in 2020, there were only 640 calls for service, which means there's a 38.4% increase over 2020 calls. With specifically looking at East Goshen, during the last 30 days, there were 485 calls for service compared to 348 calls for the same time period in 2020, which is a 39.4% increase over 2020. To kind of summarize it, we are experiencing higher calls for service in 2021 than we did in 2020, but we still have not gotten back to the levels that we experienced in 2019 before we had the pandemic. With regard to the trends that I'm seeing, once again, the pandemic is causing a lot of stress in people's lives, and it's being reflected in the calls for service. In East Goshen, just East Goshen, in the last 30 days, we had 1 rape, 1 suicide, 6 individuals having severe mental health crisis, 13 fights, and 3 reports of child abuse. So clearly, there's a lot of stress in people's lives, and we're seeing it in the calls for service. Are there any questions that the board or the audience would like to ask me? Any details that they would like me to go into?
How are the officers doing with this and managing these types of calls? So they, I know that they have camaraderie and they share to outlet, and as they do to you, Chief. How the officers holding? holding up on these particular matters, particularly
That's true.
serious issues like rape and domestic situations, suicide. So those are tough, and somebody has to address the family members of the victim and the victim itself, and those are stressful. So
Well, there is a lot of stress, but we do have a lot of services that we offer, and the county has been extraordinarily supportive as far as crisis intervention. They offer individual sessions with the departments, with the officers, and in the event that somehow you were overlooked or you didn't, it wasn't recognized that you were being stressed, once a month they have a virtual meeting where anybody can come and speak about what's on their mind. But we do have a lot of resources to support us.
yeah, good. Okay. Folks, any board members, any questions for the chief tonight on the report or any other activities police related?
I just want to say thanks to all of our officers for keeping the rest of us safe during all of these fights. 13 fights seems like it's an awful lot.
Yeah.
Is there any particular precipitating factor that was common with all of these, or were they just 13 individual situations?
13 individual situations that range from neighbor disputes. We're finding that neighbors are more testy with each other than they normally are. But we're also seeing juveniles, and we're seeing like customers getting nasty with people. It's really a wide range of disturbances that we're seeing. I just think people are on edge and they're acting out in ways they wouldn't normally act.
Is there anything that that we could have done to prevent any of those fights? Was there anything proactive? Probably not. I would think that they were just getting the call after the fact. It's not like they saw something on social media or anything like that.
Right, exactly. And with regard to handling disturbances, we do try to do a lot of mediation. And we found that particularly for neighbor disputes, because if we don't successfully mediate a resolution, we will be back there again. And our concern is for any disturbance that it will escalate. And our goal is to always try to find a happy resolution for everybody as best as we can.
Chief, I have a question. It's David. I'm sorry, I'm in the car on Route 70 in Maryland. I have a question. Is the Cody system fully implemented and everyone trained, and is it being used fully at this time?
I'm sorry, is the what system?
The code.
Cody, he's asking about Cody system.
Cody.
No, Cody we are still in the transition. We will not have a go live date until probably, it looks like June 2nd or June 4th is going to be our go live date. Right now, we are very much scrambling. We've completed the training and we have to make some difficult decisions about how we're going to implement different provisions of the Cody, but no, we have not implemented it yet. And
will our current system map over to Cody, so that are we going to have to run the two systems?
No, it's supposed to map over, but that's one of the challenges that we have is they give you samples and you have to go back and check to make sure that everything transitioned over. Like for color of eyes, it doesn't say like orange or something strange or a Ford Pinto. So we have to go through and do sample spot checks of every type of investigation, everything that we have in our database for over 2 decades. And it's a lot, but we're trying to break it up and delegate it to different groups so that it's not overwhelming for any one person.
When you talk about the calls for service, when you give us this information, are those proactive and reactive, or just reactive calls for service?
That's both.
Okay.
About the only thing that isn't shown on calls for service are things like patrol checks. If we know that we traditionally have a lot of thefts from vehicles at a soccer field, we'll go out there and that isn't reflected because that's not really a call for service. That's really more just something we're doing to try to prevent calls from service from having to occur.
It's in the line of the patrol. I mean, it's just out there being proactive during the patrol per se.
Yeah, but we document where we were, when we were there, and if we saw anything unusual.
Yeah.
Like businesses, a lot of times businesses don't always lock up the way they should, or there's something not very good about the lighting on the exterior of the building at night. We'll reach out to the business owner and express our concerns to them to try to prevent them from being the victim of a crime.
But that's not necessarily a call for service. That's just.
No, that's not reflected in calls for service.
Yeah.
Calls for service are truly calls for service.
Yeah.
The only thing that's questionable, if you want to say that, is that we do include, in many cases, citations and warnings as calls for service, because we've been asked to do traffic enforcement, and that's how we show that we've addressed that request for service.
Yeah, I got you. David, yes? Is that good?
Thanks. I'm just curious, when we get the emergency services reports, sometimes there's a pie chart that shows, columns with statistics that show by type of service. And I'm wondering if the CODI system ultimately, we can ask it for specific reports so that we can have those kinds of things at board meetings that would, show the categories in some sort of graph or columns or pie chart or something. I'm just interested in that in the future at some point. So that's why I was asking the question.
That was one of the selling points for CODI. They indicated that it does have the ability to create pie charts and to do more reports. We're still working on how that actually occurs, but that was one of the selling points. And I've been assured by other agencies that use CODI that that it does have that capability.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, David. Any other questions for the chief this evening from board members or anyone from the public? Any of our listeners? Okay.
Hi, Matt. I just want to commend the chief and her personnel under her. They've been very instrumental. They solved one crime that I know Delaware County was and the state of Delaware was working on, and they solved one crime for me that was significant, and I found them to be very professional and responsive, and I thank her and her personnel accordingly. They've been doing a very good job.
Well, the
Thank you
chief
very
loves to hear that. Thanks very much, Mr.
Yes,
Greta, for
thank you very much.
that kudo. That's nice to hear and good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Chief, thanks very much. I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
time this evening. Thanks for the report.
Thank you, chief.
Good evening, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Next, we have Carmen B. Tavio on the phone on our Zoom, our fire marshal. And Carmen, if you would present the emergency reports for Goshen and Malvern and Good Fellowship, and your fire marshal report in that order, as you have them in front of you.
Good evening, Board of Supervisors, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everybody's doing well.
Thank you. And you too.
Good to see you, Karen.
Yeah,
Karen.
it's my wife's Zoom that I what do you call it? Steal. She gives piano lessons, and over Zoom she has, and so instead of creating two Zooms, I commandeer hers for the Board of Supervisors.
There you go. There's Carmen Batavio. All right.
Yeah, I'm here under
Go ahead,
Karen.
Carmen.
So the stats I'll give you are for Goshen, Malvern, and Good Fellowship. The letter that I sent in doesn't seem to have made the agenda that I see, but we'll probably deal with that next month.
Okay.
But for Goshen Fire Company, this is East Goshen only. We had 21 fire calls, 8 fire police, EMS, which is emergency services, 170. Malvern, we got the right totals this month. We have 24, which is 38 basic life, and 21 ALS. No, 38.
21.
Yeah, 21.
21 ALS.
Yep. And Good Fellowship, we had 48. They're a little bit down. They're normally about 11% of East Goshen, which is good because they handle overflow for Goshen, plus some of the nursing homes. We did have a couple of fires. The one was in actually it's Malvern, but it's our district, East Goshen, off of West King Road. That's the letter I sent in that didn't seem to make it, but it was a deck fire that was reported by a neighbor, and that came in like 3:30 in the morning. Had the neighbor not reported it, it would have ended up in a complete dwelling fire, and the homeowners were asleep and knew nothing about it.
Oh,
So it was, we got notified quickly.
yeah.
We got dispatched quickly. We made a good stop. No injuries, and there was no loss of life, minimal property damage compared to what it could have been. We have been a little bit down on calls, thank God. The only thing I can say about with Cheap or No is I'm glad they're getting it and not us. Not that I want to blame it on the police. But Chief, if you're still on the air, I think every person that has a meltdown should come out and get stung once or twice with a bee. It might make them feel better.
The chief's no longer on the line, but that may
Okay.
be something Rick can pass that along to the chief.
And that as an addendum that they should all come out and get stung once or twice, and it sort of works through your body. I do work with a psychologist in all of my beekeeping. We do all of our beekeeping together, and he has seen over a 200% growth in his business since COVID, and it's all been the same. So it just goes to show what Brenda's saying. People are having trouble, and I'm not analyzing things here, but people are having trouble. Thank God we haven't had people that have turned to arson and or other forms of injuring other people.
Yeah.
The calls that we had for Goshen of 21, I probably was on a vehicle or driving a vehicle 80% of the time. So what reports you see is us trying to do a good job for East Goshen. And at that point, I can't bore you anymore. Do you have any questions?
No, not boring at all. These statistics don't tell the whole story of the risk and the work that's out there and the safety measures that are in place to serve the residents and to minimize disasters, damage, and serious injuries. So the statistics only tell so much, and we know that there's so much behind the scenes. So Carmen, I appreciate it. Folks, any questions from the board members?
Have we had any more false alarms from our neighbors at Wellington?
I think we had one possibly a week ago. I think you have a report on that. But they have definitely dropped off.
Good.
Thank God for
I don't have
the
a
best.
report on that, but
I
okay.
will say with COVID restrictions easing, we are now back to active firefighting drills, which has absolutely killed me. But we go to the burn center in Westchester and we simulate fires, and the firefighters that do interior firefighting go in. Those of us that do engineering, which is pump operation and so forth, we pump. But we've started doing that again. And we had a drill last night that lasted till like 10 o'clock.
Oh.
And by the time we filled all the air packs from the bottles and got the trucks back in service, I didn't get home till like 11:30. It's like the old days.
Yeah.
But the crew, I will say this again, I don't want to take up your time. Last night was a pure example of, with COVID restrictions easing, we were able to go back to honest to goodness practice firefighting, which is muscle. It's all muscle memory, so that when a fire comes in, you know what the heck to do so you don't get killed or kill somebody else. So it's a good thing. We had a good drill late for us old people, but we're back to what we could do.
Well, and that's some of that backstory that we don't hear all the time. And I think the guys, the volunteers and the career that are together in that service, now they're together in the training again. I think that's a positive thing for their spirits as well, even though it's a long session. That's good to hear those kind of reports. So Carmen, thank you.
All right, and I'd like to pose one more thing. I
Sure.
would like to see if the board could come to the burn center in Westchester when we have a burn drill, and you could witness some of the drills that we go through. It's all practice drills. We beat the heck out of everybody. You're filled with smoke. You're not filled with smoke. We're filled with smoke. But it's training that we do every week in preparation of when we get the one that counts. So
You should send us a schedule of some of those, and then as the board members, I think, I got firsthand experience on how organized the department was when you responded to the recent incident on Green Hill Road at the north gate of Hershey's Mill, and just observing the way that the fire companies interacted, different fire companies. Whiteman was there as well as Goshen. The organization that was just, as you say, muscle memory, but there was a lot of intelligence in the protocols that were being followed, and everybody seemed to know what they were doing. They were attentive. It was that was a great experience for a layperson like myself to be able to observe firsthand. But send us a schedule for those, and I think you'll get some participants.
let me run it up through the chain of command, and if it's doable, we'll do it.
All right.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Carmen, any follow-up on the, if they're gonna be able to do the 15-week club during the summertime?
The 15-week club, I believe, will be available, and we are having a fair this year.
Woohoo!
Yay.
We had a impromptu flower sale with minimal flowers, and we sold out in 2 hours.
Oh, terrific.
Just to show people that we're trying to get back. We are having a fair, according to Teddy Harrison III, unless the governor gives additional restrictions or Department of Agriculture. We are having a fair. However, we don't know in what shape and form. So,
Do you have dates yet? Have you selected dates?
yes.
Actually, that last week of February.
Can you bear with me a second? Michael, remember, I'm of the older generation. I don't remember these things. It's looking like
All right, we'll get back. You'll get back to us, but that's good. It's good news. Another good sign.
I think we're talking the first week of August, which would be the 2nd through the 7th. Do not absolutely quote me or take my paycheck away if I'm wrong, but I do believe it's the first. What are you laughing about over there? I believe it's the 2nd through the 7th of August, and we will have it in some shape or form.
Okay, good. Well, that's a real positive report.
And one last thing, I'd like to compliment and thank the new employees coming on to East Goshen. I hope to meet them soon. Do a good job. I'm sure you will. And East Goshen residents love you.
Well, there you
Michelle,
go.
did you have another question?
Yeah, the breakfast, are they coming back?
Oh, unfortunately for me, yes.
Yeah, you are the chief cook and bottle washer.
I go up at 2:30 in the morning and cook. That will be after the fair this year. So August, probably September again.
Great.
If the governor keeps things the way they are,
Okay,
it normally is the next month after the fair.
that's great.
So yes, it will be coming up.
That's great. It's nice to know that we're going to get some of these fundraisers back on the books. That's awesome. Thanks, Carmen.
Yes.
Thank you, Carmen.
Good night, all.
All right, be safe out there.
Take care. Thank you.
And just before we jump in, well, we have our financial report coming up, but it's a good segue to reintroduce Dave Ware again, who is our new recent Director of Finance. Dave is now getting his feet wet. It's you're almost 1 month into the official duties. And also our successor to Rick Smith, recently appointed, is Derek Davis. And Derek, great to see you, and you're invested and immersed already before you're even officially with us. But congratulations again. So both these fine professionals are online with us today. Dave, I'm going to turn it to you for Dave Ware for the financial report for April.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, I wish that Carmen's offer opens up to some of the staff as well, as opposed to just the supervisor. I'd love to go out and see the fire company in action. I think that would go a long way to showing what they can do. That's awesome.
Well, we'll give you some time off to do that sooner or later.
I doubt it. I'm waist deep. You said I'm getting my feet wet. I'm half up to my waist. Anyway, we had
trial by fire, Dave. It's trial by fire.
Yeah.
Trial by fire is okay with me. We're doing well. It's as of April 30th, net of pass-throughs, we are general fund had revenues of $4,333,062 and expenses of $3,300,000, $23,000, and $470 for a positive variance of $1,009,592. So as of April 30th, month end, year to date, the general fund balance was $65,64,068. That's about where we had it. We have a little bit of wiggle room that goes from month to month, but I'm looking at this on a year to date and a full year total basis, and I think we're looking pretty good. So on the expense side, the things to look at, we had actual police expenses was the favorable variance. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with reading negative and positive and seeing these variance numbers, but when you have less expenses, it's favorable, and you have more revenues, it's favorable. So we are favorable versus, we're favorable versus the police expenses on the budget, but we did have a little flip. So while the monthly budget allocation assumed the 2019 contribution schedule, in actuality, I think we're going to end up being about flat with the full year.
Okay.
So we see it year to date, but really it's going to level out.
Okay.
It's just a monthly issue that'll catch up in the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Just to let you guys aware of that, because I don't want to make it seem like we've got money sitting out there that we're not, that we're ahead of the game.
Right. It's just a snapshot of the current year to date.
That's correct, Mike. And additionally, we also have a $55K payment that's going to come out to DVHT for insurance this month.
Yeah.
That's going to catch up the actual administration, so that should be about flat.
Yeah.
All the other departments are looking really in line. We all know about the snow in the budget, so I'm not going to rehash that. But other than that, parks, the public works is right in line. So that's exciting to see. Parks and Rec actually realized less equipment and maintenance expense year to date than we budgeted. So we're pretty tight right now. I'm in the process of doing a 2021 reprojection, which is going to be part of our long range plan, which I will get to you June 8th. I have the directors submitting back to me large dollar numbers that are going to impact that, any pushes of schedule, different things that we need to consider. And I really look forward to having your input on how that's going to impact the 2022 budget, as well as the outreach long plan going forward.
Okay.
Whether it's borrowing, whether it's taxes, whether it's revenue streams or expense decreases, how we kind of manage what we're looking at. On the revenue side, however, we are really very blessed this year. Real estate tax transfer has exceeded year-to-date expectations. And we actually have a little 87,500 kudo already in May, which is not included in this for the $17.5 million QBC transfer,
Yeah.
which actually made the Vista page, which was pretty cool to see. It's nice to be in the news, and it's good that
$87 million.
it's a building that people can use, and it's being used. So I think that shows that East Goshen can stay strong with a corporate footprint.
Yeah.
219,000 was budgeted as expected revenue, but that's actually just a flip. It's just going to be an expense reduction to the police expenses,
Right.
and that is due to a surplus last year.
Yeah. I thought,
So-
I looked at that twice and then I got it. I understood that now.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it. If anybody has any questions, I'm glad to explain it. It's I don't think they knew how to treat it at the end of last year when the budget was finalized.
Mhm.
And after dealing with Kathy Brill, I understood that it's really just a reduction of expenses. So you'll just see a flip between the expenses and the revenue. Technically on the one report, it's an emergency, but it's really just the police.
Yeah.
So-
I'm glad you mentioned Kathy Brill's name. Obviously, you've had a chance to interface with her. She's a great resource on the WeGo side of things, and has
Absolutely.
lots of backstory and legacy information. So she'll be able to immerse you in that as you share your current reporting back and forth. So I'm glad you guys have had a chance to meet and start to interact on those matters. That's great, Dave.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually, I'm not sure how early I can reach out, but I'd love to reach out and get an early version. Maybe that's more for the police commission, but I'd love to get an early version of the WeGo budget moving forward, if I could, from them, to just apply the same kind of rationale that we do to our budget and
Yeah.
our long range forecasts going forward.
If
So
anybody can do that, Kathy can advance that. And of course, as Derek comes on board, he'll be interested to immerse in those figures as well. So that's something you guys are all going to be being introduced to as you then take it on, and that's part of the steps that you're the new guys on the block, so to speak. So that'll come in time, but it sounds like you're on top of things, Dave, and I appreciate hearing it. Are there questions from board members on any of Dave's comments on the current report for April? We did meet last week, so there's a little less reporting than there might normally be, since we were just together this past Tuesday. Any questions? Any comments? Anybody in the public venue? Any questions for Dave Ware on finances? Okay, Dave, thank you. And since we did meet last week, we don't have any minutes to consider. We do have a treasurer's report for May 6th. Go ahead, Dave, you might as well pick up on that one. I know there's some bills to pay here, and there are a couple comments you have on the cover page.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I'll enunciate those. It's only been a week. There really isn't a lot to call out, but we did have $53.40 paid from the general fund for costs associated with the traffic accident at Paoli Pike and Boot Road. Those will be recouped again from the insurance company, as well as the original payment, and that should be forthcoming probably by the end of May, hopefully sooner. But definitely that's what our expectation is. Mark Miller was following up, so we appreciate that. We did have $1,717.48 paid from the Capital Reserve Fund for the Paoli Pike Trail, the construction expenses, the inspections offset by grant funds that were received. So that's pretty much a flat one.
Yeah.
The only other thing I wanted to add into this is I did have a little bit of color to our monthly B&D computer solutions invoice. I follow up with our analyst, and they pretty much give us a flat rate of $2,000, and some things change month to month, but pretty much he's maintaining antivirus and anti-malware on the main server, as well as 25 workstations. He does set up remote access as necessary. He's repairing the computers as necessary. We have new and old, so that's an ongoing battle depending on which ones he's dealing with. He is setting up and installing new equipment, such as Derek coming on, reconfiguring computers and email accounts, and he's also integrated into setting us up with new VNets as we need it. That's who facilitates our email. He also helps set up anybody's iPhones and iPads as necessary, because we have to be connected 24/7.
That's right.
So he helps us with that, and he works with the security vendors, and he definitely helps Public Works with all of their field data gathering. So
Thanks
we
for
appreciate
getting all that information. I did talk with him on I had an opportunity to talk with him about some of that stuff.
Oh,
And
good.
I asked him if he would be kind enough to start documenting that on a monthly basis, just so we know when he eventually retires, what we're getting ourselves into in the future. We need to be prepared for that time. And I appreciate that. And he'll be getting a call from me tomorrow.
All right.
I have a little bit of a computer issue tonight, so he'll be getting a call from me tomorrow, unfortunately. So,
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Michelle. We do have some bills to pay here. I've taken a look at them. I don't have any, this is a small packet, again, meeting last week. I see the one expense here associated with Higgins and Sons repairing traffic light, and that's going to be reimbursed at $5,300 plus dollars.
Yes.
From an insurance claim, so that's good. But I don't have any other questions. Board members, any questions on any of the proposed bills to pay?
no,
Anybody would like to make a motion?
Mr. Vice Chairman, I'd move that we graciously accepted the receipts and approve the expenditures as presented in the expenditure register and as summarized in the treasurer's report.
We have a second.
Second the motion.
All right. Any comments from anyone else in the audience? Any board members? Nothing, Susan? Okay. Call the question then to approve the bills to pay and accept the receipts.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Let's see. Well, no old business. We have none. We have old stories, but we're not going to tell any of those. New business. Consider recommendation on ESKE development variance request. Rick, would you like to comment, or Mark, on this application?
We jump in on that for you, Mr. Chairman. So SE Development LLC is the developer and owner of the property at 1302 Wilson Lane Drive. I'm sorry, the new Ducklings Daycare Center that was built in, approved by the board by conditional use and land development in 2018 and built in 2019. We're closing out the project, and a land development requires an as-built drawing to close it out, and an error in the survey was found, and the building was built over the setback line by 3.5 feet. So to clean up and to document the nonconformity and this issue for the file for future historical purposes, we felt it was necessary to go through the zoning variance process, and the applicant's here tonight to lay out their application for that variance request.
Before we do that, Mark, I guess I had a basic question on this. Initially, I written down the word de minimis, but I recognize the documentation that's needed to verify this error that ultimately is really, as I see it, no harm, no foul per se. But could we have done this simply with just an update to the as-built plan rather than the zoning hearing board proceeding? Or is the zoning hearing board proceeding merely just to document this and make sure that there's a full record of it?
Right, and the as-built plan does show the error, and that's where the engineer said, you know, this is what happened. Here's the as-built drawing is the actual on-site conditions, and we went to council, spoke with Kristen, spoke with Nate Klein, and he's seen it before, and he says, really, probably should document it, put it in the file. That way, historically, 10 years down the road, you can pull it out and somebody has a question, or God forbid something or happened to the building and it have to be replaced. Well, it's now non-conforming. What do we do? So this way the variance is on file and we won't have an issue.
Okay, and I get that, but I thought I would ask the question, and
Sure.
that was my sense that you had a clear, transcripted and adjudicated, if you will, document to stand the test of time over time, which we know is necessary as these things have long lives, and looking back, if you don't have it, you can be behind the 8 ball with trying to scramble and remember what occurred. That
Exactly.
yeah, very good. Are there now, let's see, and who is here representing the applicant? Is it you, John?
It is, Mr. Chairman, John Jarris on behalf of the applicants.
Nice to see you. Go ahead, John.
Nice to see you. Good evening, everyone. I am without our civil engineering firm, Joe Rosello from DL Howe, so go easy with any complicated questions for me. But simply put, we are seeking relief from section 240-19G of the Township Code, reducing the 100-foot rear yard setback to 96.5, a deviation of 3.5 feet. As the chairman said, I would characterize that in my experience as de minimis.
Yep.
And those of you familiar with this property know that there isn't much behind it
That's
so
right.
as to impede anyone else's use of their property. And I was informed that during development of the architectural plans, the building was designed with a misinterpretation that the inside line of the rear sidewalk was the building setback line. So they went ahead, designed the interior the way they did. We apologize for that error. I don't think it's the first time it's ever happened in the field. I don't think it's going to be the last time. So as Mark did explain, we felt it best. We agreed with staff to pursue this relief from the zoning hearing board. The planning commission made a recommendation, I think, on their May 5th meeting, that the board not take a position, and that's the request we're making this evening.
Questions for Mr. Jaros from board members? Anything specific?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we don't take a position on this application, refer to the zoning hearing board.
Okay, that's
I
a
second
motion.
that.
A second. Is there any comment or question on that motion before us? I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Aye. So that is 4-0.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did want to say to Mr. Smith, I wish him all the best, and I congratulate Mr. Davis on his appointment. So
Thank you, John.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
All right. Good luck in front of the zoning hearing board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks. Next one we have is consider recommendation on the Greto variance. Mark Gordon, if you would, and I know we have Mr. Greto here with us, and someone's sitting next to him. I don't know whether is that Mrs. or is that the
This is my lovely wife. I'm making his
lovely
speech
wife?
for
I'm glad yes, very good. Very nice to see you. Mark, I'll let you introduce this one if you will.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the Gretos live in Wilpen Farms on Springhouse Lane, 331 Springhouse Lane, approximately 5-acre parcel. Is that right, Mr. Greto?
4.82 maybe.
Approximately 5-acre lot, corner lot of Strasburg Road and Springhouse Lane. The house includes an accessory pool house, and a pool shed. So the pool has a fence around it. Mr. Greto was replacing that probably 25, 30-year-old fence and was replacing it with a 6-foot fence with very elaborate pillars, very sturdy pillars of concrete masonry construction. And it was brought to the township's attention that those pillars were exceed the 6-foot limitation. Once I looked at them and did measure them and concurred that they were more than 6 foot tall, I sent a letter to Mr. and Mrs. Greto, just informed them of the ordinance, and the requirement that it be 6 foot high, and met with them on site and explained to them that there is a variance option that they could go through, and they've decided to come in with a plan for variance, sketch plan and a variance request for dimensional relief from the 6 foot requirement for fences in the side yard. They're also installing 4-foot fences around the front of the property with pillars that will be, as I'm told, 4 foot tall. So that's what we expect them to be. And they're being constructed now, but I'll let Mr. Greto go ahead and give the rest of it.
Mr. Greto, please.
May it please the board. When I acquired this property in, I think it was 15, the property required a lot of work. In fact, the privacy fence that Mr. Gordon just referenced was in significant disrepair. And I believe certain mandates by the township were expressed to the prior owner before I could get a certificate of occupancy. Since that time, we started to make improvements on the fence, the existing fence. And after I acquired the property, a storm came through and took 3 panels out. And we made temporary panels. Most of the failure was due to the posts and them failing at grade. It was a 6-foot privacy fence. The panels that I made are 6 feet, but instead of using post, I used masonry construction. So I wouldn't have to deal with that again. And when I created the masonry construction, I blocked up for the 6-foot panel. I acquired a large patch of locust trees, black locust trees, which is very good for outdoor endurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I acquired them free of charge from the expansion of the 322 interchange between Route 1 and 95. When the state opened that highway up, that required a felling of several locust trees that I acquired. And I made these 6-foot panels, as well as a large number of posts, 6 inch by 4 by 6 by 8 posts and 2 by 6 rails to replace the post and rail fence that was also failing around the property. When a storm came through, I took the three panels that were damaged by the storm and replaced them temporarily with panels that I created while I was making the panels from the locust trees that I acquired. From 2016 to 2017, I completed that 6-foot panel fence, the privacy fence around the pool. While I was doing that, there was also a problem with the pool. The pool was not grounded properly. The pool required significant work. Put about $20,000–$30,000 into the pool. And while I was doing that, I was working with the township and their inspectors at that time. I believe someone under Mr. Miller. It wasn't Mr. Gordon or Mr. Miller. It was another individual. and discussed all the work that was going on. We completed that fence. Everything was fine for about a year or two. And as I was doing the fence around the southern property line, I came into conflict with the neighbor on my southern border, who has been a bit of a thorn, as I understand it, in Mr. Gordon's side. I don't want to speak to that in detail, but I believe that the fence that I installed was up for a year or two while the township was involved in what I was doing. It's my understanding that this neighbor complained. It is greater than 6 feet. The way, I mean, locust is a very heavy wood. In fact, when I was teaching my children about wood, I would show my daughter a piece of maple, because we lost several maple trees on the property, 4 or 5, due to disease. Had nothing to do with the storms. And my daughter was asking, hey, what kind of wood is this? What's the difference? This, and I said, well, pick this up, pick that up. One is maple, one is locust. One is very light, one is very heavy. One is darker in color, et cetera, et cetera. To support that the locust panels that I made, because of the weight, it's significant. It requires a lot of infrastructure. So we created these columns, fabricated them out of block and mortar, cinder block and mortar inside, brick on the outside. We bricked up to 6 feet to secure the panels to the column. And then after we secured the panels to the column, we lopped off the top and finished it off with a course of brick and Pennsylvania blue flat fieldstone. There's a slope in the grade. So I'm about a course or two above the panel, the 6 foot, on the uphill side. And as the grade varies, and the pictures are in the application, I may be 3, 4, or 5 courses of brick above the panel
On the lower grade.
on the downhill side of the column.
Right.
Again, it was up for a couple years due to the conflict that we're in litigation over. It has nothing to do with what we're doing. We'll resolve that outside of this. This issue was brought to Mr. Gordon's attention. I met with Mr. Gordon about that issue and other issues that I have with this neighbor, and decided that the variance was the best approach, because even if I lopped off the top to notch out, I could lop off the top of that brick column to bring it down to 6 feet. I'll have to lop it off, notch that Pennsylvania fieldstone off, which would be a terrible thing to do in my opinion, but inexpensive. But then on the downhill side, 2 feet over, I'm still going to be over. So I'm seeking a variancing on that after the fact. I'm doing a similar approach because, I mean, Strasburg Road's a very busy road. I have a dog. I'm concerned about him going out into the road. I want to have a fenced in area for my dog.
Yeah.
So I'm doing 4-foot columns from that privacy fence on Springhouse Lane to the corner of Springhouse and Strasburg, turning 90 degrees and following parallel to Strasburg to my northeast property corner that I share with Miss Early. I'm in the process of making the same columns, albeit 4 feet high in the rough. So I'm gonna cinder block up. I got a 36 by 36 by 36 inch footer. I block up off of that with cinder block to 4 feet. Right now, some of them are in the rough. They're 4.5, 5 foot, whatever. I'll secure this, I'm gonna put black aluminum, black powder coated aluminum, fence. The aluminum part is about 1 inch by 1 inch. And then
Is
there's
this
3 or
fence
4
in
inches in
question, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is this, the fence you're talking about now, is that an issue?
No, doesn't seem to be. That's
All right,
that's already.
let's get to the, can we get to the
I
chase?
believe that is an issue because as I brick up, I'm going to secure that black powder coated aluminum fence to the columns every 27 feet. And I'm going to cap that off. And those columns may, at some instances, be a course of brick above the 4-foot aluminum fence.
But that's not 6 feet though. You're allowed up to 6 feet though.
Now, but you're only allowed 4 in the front.
No,
Oh,
4
4 in the
feet,
front, Mark. Okay.
4 feet in the front. The fence that Mr. Greta is speaking about, if you look at the screen I'm sharing right now,
Yes. Is
I
the
cannot see
got
it.
it.
is the front perimeter with
Yeah.
Strasburg and Springhouse, which ties in here at the existing fencing that Mr. Greta has already constructed. It also goes from the house over here to the side yard. So as he was saying, he wants to keep the dogs in,
Oh,
back,
sure.
right? So
First of all,
and
Mr.
then
Greto,
here's existing fence.
I appreciate the detailed explanation. Of course, the matter will be decided, adjudicated before the zoning hearing board. We appreciate hearing the applications that are presented to the zoning hearing board in advance of that, so that we understand the matters that are being brought before the zoning hearing board. But they are their own independent body. We often comment on them. But in this particular case, it's one of these situations where you had it in place, but that was reported to the township, and the township, of course, has no alternative but to respond to it relative to what the code says. So the zoning hearing board proceeding that you're going to be underway with is the proper venue, I think. My understanding is that there may be some work that's ongoing right now that should probably not be occurring until you go before the zoning hearing board. Is that something I'm understanding correctly, Mark or Mr. Greto? So that things kind of, if you will, cease and desist until the zoning hearing board has a chance to review this and render a decision.
I have questions too.
Yeah, but is there any work going on now that shouldn't be going on, Mark, in the circumstances until the zoning hearing board gets a chance to review this? Hear the case?
I mean, you move forward at your own risk, Mr. Greto. The pillars that are out there exceed 4 feet today that you're constructing. You know.
Okay, so you're aware of that, Mr. Greto. If you are doing work, that if the decision does not go your way, that you're advancing this, that it may have to be altered, so that it might be prudent for you not to pursue that until you get a decision from the zoning hearing board. That would be a suggested, at least from my standpoint, to you. Yeah.
I may respond to that. The pillars that are being constructed along Springhouse Lane and along Strasburg Road are in the rough. It's the cinder block that's the core of the column. The top elevation or the height of that column is a function of the size of the block and where that block sits relative to the footer. At the end of the day, I can cut that. You can't build that to spec in the rough. You got to build it with what you have.
Got you.
Cut it down to spec.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I can continue on as it is. And if I do not get a favorable decision from the board, the zoning hearing board, when I make my cut, I'll make my cut at 4 foot, and I'll put notches in my Pennsylvania fieldstone that I cap off with it. I'd rather not do that. I think that would be a terrible thing, I don't think it would look good aesthetically, but
Sure.
I can do that. What I will say is that the fence that is in place and the pine trees that are in place along, and the maple tree, and there's an oak tree and other trees that are dealing with the same plight that the other trees have caused to be felled. They're going to be taken out. And the sight line is going to be dramatically improved when you're coming out of Springhouse. Right now, when I come out of Springhouse Lane, my sight line to the east is sketchy. And in the summertime, when I look to the west,
Hmm.
there's a hedgerow on my neighbor's property, which is, I'm not complaining about, but
Yeah.
the sight line, my sight line to the east will be better than that sight line to the west. Why? Because if you come take a site inspection, and I invite everyone to so do, I'm 20 feet back from that sight line.
Hmm.
The improvement of that sight line will be dramatic.
Mr. Groth, well, thanks for this explanation. Of course, we need to, yeah.
Can I ask my
go through this.
questions?
But Michelle, go ahead, please.
I don't have many. I just want to know why you continue to do the construction, even though the zoning director actually sent you a letter instructing you to stop until you got a variance.
I don't believe the site.
I did not instruct him to stop.
You did not instruct him to stop. Thank you. And the letter is dated, was that April something, Mark?
Um,
Can you tell us the date of the letter?
yep, just a moment. So my letter was April 5th.
Thanks. So since April 5th, how many pillars have been constructed?
Did I see the letter?
The letter was to you on April the 5th. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Greta, it's been brought to the township's attention you're installing fencing around the property. And then it goes.
If I could have that
ordinance.
screen enlarged so I could read the letter that you're referring to.
That's the letter that you received from the township.
Yeah, but I received notice of this hearing this morning. I responded to Mr. Gordon promptly and received a follow-up
Okay,
at the end of the day. So I'm not prepared for your question,
okay.
reviewing the letter that you're referring to. I apologize.
Well, but this is,
That's it.
but this is.
Michelle, any other questions?
Yes, I just have a couple of additional questions. I'll be
Sure.
quick, but I'd like to know how many pillars have been constructed since that date.
Since when?
Since the date of this letter.
What is the date of the letter?
It's April the 5th, is it, Mark?
Yes, April 5th.
I believe 2, maybe 3.
And does that include the pillars that were being constructed today when I drove past running errands on the side property?
There was nothing being constructed today on the property
There was-
anywhere.
There was a gentleman outside. I drove past your property when I was running an errand.
I apologize.
There was a gentleman on your property working on
He was
pillars on the
weed
side.
whacking. The gentleman on my property was knocking the weeds down in the area
Okay,
between the pillars and Strasburg Road, because the lawn crew that I have come weekly, we had a string line up and they did not cut that area, and I thought it looked terrible.
okay, so
To come to weed whack that.
that's fine. Okay, so then I guess my next question is, the pool fence
Yes,
it's still unaffixed.
there is one panel that was affixed. The panel, I unsecured that panel. It's a very heavy panel. I unsecured that panel because, as I pointed out to you and Mr. Gordon on the day that I came out of court and arrived home from the court preliminary, there was a pretrial matter that was before the court yesterday. I came home and you and Mr. Gordon were present. We discussed that panel.
Yes,
As I explained to you and Mr. Gordon yesterday, and I'm explaining to the board now, the 2 maple trees, the 1 maple tree is completely dead except 1 limb. The maple tree within the fence is half dead. The neighbor across the street, Mr. West advised me that there were several other maple trees coming up to the driveway that died and were removed.
Excuse me, Mr. Greto, it doesn't matter. The fact is that you're out of compliance with the pool ordinance.
Ms. Truitt, if I may finish. The trees are dying. The panel was secured.
I have nothing further.
I removed the panel and I fixed it temporarily in anticipation of the tree expert coming, the arborist, to remove those two maple trees. I removed them a week or two ago. He was supposed to come last week. He got COVID. He has COVID. His assistant is in quarantine. He is recovering well. I hope and expect him to come next week.
And
Next week or
that
the
would
week
mean-
after, I expect those two maple trees to be felled and that panel to be secured permanently. I discussed this with Mr. Gordon. I inquired of Mr. Gordon whether I could put the no climb fence in place that I have around the rest of the property as a temporary feature, and I'm in a dialogue or correspondence with Mr. Gordon as to what will comply, what will be compliant in a temporary basis for 1 week or two until those two trees are felled.
That'll be sufficient.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, at this point in time, Mr. Greto, certainly we appreciate your explanation and of course, this is all going to be reviewed by the zoning hearing board and as part of the application. We appreciate hearing the comments about these things. At this point in time, I would ask the board if there is any a motion they would like to make relative to this particular application before the zoning hearing board.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm going to recommend that we take no position on this matter and allow this gentleman to go before the zoning hearing board.
So no position on this dimensional variance application, and that's consistent with the recommendation from the Planning Commission as well. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion, Mike.
Okay. Any comment, any further question on this one? If not, yes. If not, I'll
Mr. Chair.
call the vote.
Was there any public comment you wanted to get, or do you want to wait until after your vote?
Oh, if there's any public comment on the motion that's before us, which the board is taking no position on this, essentially saying that let the zoning hearing board do its work, and we have no position that we're taking, period. We're neutral. That's the only thing there'd be comment on at this point in time.
Like, we have one additional caller and there's no comment at this point.
Okay, at this point, then I would call the vote.
Aye.
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 Here, 3. David, are you there? David Shuey?
Doesn't look like he's on anymore.
Okay. Then that would be 3-0 with no position. Mr. Greto, thanks for taking the time this evening. And Mrs. Greto, and best to you before the zoning hearing board, and hopefully the decision rendered is one that will be satisfactory. Thanks so much.
Very much. I apologize for not being more prepared.
Oh, that's all right. You provided a great bit of detail, and we thank you for that. Thanks for taking the time.
Have a good day, everybody.
All right, all the best. Let's see, next item, folks, is consider resolution 2021 number 29, updating the code of conduct for our ABCs. This is a pretty simple amendment. Rick, why don't you just comment on it? And I don't know if there'll be a lot of discussion on it, but it's a pretty straightforward amendment to our code of conduct.
So since the last time it was updated, the Park and Rec went from a Park and Rec board to a Park and Rec commission. We've also added a couple committees. And we also now have a business park task force. And there's been discussion about making sure that all the members are current with their taxes and fees. So we've added that. And other than that, that's the only change.
Okay. Are there any questions from the fellow supervisors on this particular resolution before us?
I have no questions.
Any questions or comments from any members of the public that are with us?
We need, is this a motion or an approval?
Excuse me. I don't think anyone's made a motion yet.
I was just gonna say, I think we do need to make a motion.
Yeah, would anybody like to make a motion on this one?
John, would you like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. I move that we approve Resolution 2021-29, establishing a code of conduct for township ABCs.
A second?
Second.
All right, very good. Now we can open it up to any further question or comment on this pending resolution. Anyone from the public, Susan?
There's no, Mike.
Okay, hearing none, then I'll call the vote.
Aye.
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 And David's not with us again.
David is not, no.
So that passes 3-0. And thanks for the work on that, Rick and all. Let's see. Consider resolution 2021-34A, increasing the fee for soliciting license. This one's a pretty straightforward one as well. Rick, if you want to give a little background on it.
So at your last meeting, the board adopted an ordinance that deleted the requirement that applicants for soliciting licenses bring us 2 photographs. We now have the equipment that we can take the picture, issue a hard copy card with their photo on it. But in order to do that, we are now increasing the cost of the fee. And it's basically 2 parts. We're charging $28 for the soliciting permit, which is paid by any solicitor that does it for a for-profit company.
Right.
And we also have to charge $22, so it's $22 for the state police background check, which everybody has to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So the total fee for soliciting permit is now $50.
Okay.
And the only thing it changed is it's now $28.
All right. And no other changes to this, the fee resolution. That's the only one.
Now,
Thanks, Rick. Any questions any board members have on this particular pending resolution?
None.
Anything from the public, Susan?
No, and David's back on the call.
Oh, hello, David. Well, I would.
Hey, Mike, I lost my signal, but I just got it back, so sorry.
All right, good to have you back, David. How about a motion to consider? I'm not sure that I already did it. I'm out of sequence, but is there a motion?
Mike.
You need a motion.
I would make the motion to accept to pass a resolution 2021-34A, establishing and consolidating various fees and charges. Is that the one, Rick?
Yes.
A second to adopt that resolution. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
All right. And now, any other questions or comments? I'll get back in sync.
I have no questions.
Hearing none. I'll call the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And David, you there?
He's on. I'm not sure if he can, he just dropped off, Mike.
Dropped off again.
All right.
So
Well,
3-0.
3-0 it is. All right, folks. How about discussing information about reopening the township building? And I think our esteemed Director of Parks and Recreation, Jason Lang, you're going to take the lead on this one, Jason?
Yep. How's everybody
Welcome.
doing tonight?
Good to see you.
You too. So, just to set the table at last meeting, obviously we had approved reopening the township building for Park and Rec programming starting on June 1st. And on that same day, Governor Wolf released his upcoming guidance that on May 31st, he'll be doing away with all social distancing and other COVID-related guidelines except for face masking. And that will be lifted. Also, he's anticipating when 70% of PA residents are vaccinated 18 and up. So as of May 31st, which, for us is really June 1st, we're now at the point where we can discuss bringing the ABCs back in for in-person meetings. So what that would look like, and this is at full capacity. So as of June 1st, all indoor functions could be at full capacity. So for the boardroom, Rick could tell you the exact number, but it's around 125. The program room could be upward of 30. Where we meet, where the board has executive session. We do a lot of the ABC meetings. Rick, give me the exact number, but we're at like 10 to 15 individuals in there. So we're at the point now where we can do in-person meetings, which I think a lot of folks will welcome. Just some notes. Folks would have to wear a mask unless they can be 6 feet apart. So that will be a consideration for the board to consider, is if we do want to have a board meeting and we have the elected officials up front and we have a full room, is that may be a nuance that we want to discuss. We may want to have just a blanket. Everyone continues to wear face masks as a consideration. But in terms of cleanliness, Public Works will continue their daily sanitation schedules. Hand sanitizer and hand washing will still be available, so we can stay safe. We can have in-person meetings and kind of go from there. So in thinking of what we could do as a rollout, a few different options, the board could say as of June 1st, all meetings are back in person. That could be one step we could do. It'd be clean, it'd be simple. Or because we have, quite a number of ABCs, they're all volunteers, and we're probably looking at maybe 70 individual people. We could make the decision where the board authorizes in-person meetings on June 1st, but gives each ABC flexibility for a specific amount of time to continue using the Zoom platform if it so chooses. That could be just the June meeting. That could be, all in-person meetings start September 1st. But those are the different things I think we could consider tonight and make a decision on. I did talk to the Park and Rec Commission just to get their feedback on what their opinions would be. And they were across the board in favor of doing in-person meetings if possible.
Okay.
The question that one individual had was he would only do it if everyone was vaccinated. So that question may come up from other ABC members. And as the solicitor's recommendation, we can ask if people have been vaccinated, but we can't preclude their inclusion in activities based on the status of their vaccination. So that could be the situation where each ABC, depending on their membership and their members' feelings towards vaccinations and being in the room, that may lead us to want to have that little bit of flexibility based off of the comfort level of the various ABC members. So with that, I'll open it up to any kind of questions, comments, and general board discussion.
I'll chime
Go
in.
ahead, Michelle.
I like the idea of offering ABCs the opportunity to start meeting in person again if they so choose. I think it should be a decision each of the volunteer boards makes. I don't think that the Board of Supervisors should dictate that to them. Everybody has different opinions, and I'd rather not see us forcing any board to do anything in particular. I'd like to eventually see us get back to fully in person, but I don't know if that will ever really happen. As for us, I'd like to see us have one Zoom meeting per month as a board and one in-person meeting per month as a board in the boardroom, at least through the summertime, and then potentially regroup looking at September moving forward to determine what the situation is then. I think that we need to take this really on a month-by-month basis and take a look at the situation as it changes. It's ever evolving. Just my opinion. And do we have to make this?
I was going to ask Rick whether are you looking for a motion from the board on any of this, or Jason on this particular? Is this a policy matter that we should memorialize as a motion, or do we just keep it?
Right. Well, we need to advertise the meetings. So if we're going to change from the board's going to change, then we need to advertise it. And the same thing with the each ABC.
Okay. Well,
Now, Rick, if it's already advertised as Zoom, and all the meeting will the in-person meeting be broadcast Zoom?
No,
It won't.
It will be broadcast YouTube though, right?
it would be YouTube, but the YouTube is you can't participate via YouTube. All you can
Right.
do is
The old
But
way-
how
the old way we used to.
will Marty participate if he's not going to be in the room?
the way under the current law, not the law they enacted for the COVID. A supervisor can participate electronically, either via Zoom or a cell phone, as long as he can fully participate in the meeting, which means he has to be able to hear and see what's going on, and other people have to be able to hear him. I've had some discussions with Marty. I'm not sure if he's going to want to participate over the phone, but if Marty wanted to participate, he could do it over the phone for sure. Or perhaps we could have him zoom in. His smiling face will be on the big screen, and we could point the camera at the podium. So whenever a resident wanted to speak, they would have to go to the podium, and Marty could see that person speaking.
So we're proposing.
But it would not be a Zoom meeting for the whole public, though. It would
No,
not be
the
a
public
hybrid
would have
meeting.
to
It
come
would
to
not
the-
be hybrid.
Public would have to come in,
Mhm.
okay, because that was the biggest challenge we had before, was trying to get the audio and the video to sync up.
Yeah, no, that,
That was a concern.
That's the $35,000
Right.
solution.
Okay.
At some point we may want to do.
well, I like the approach that you suggested, Michelle. I think it's gentle. I think it allows respect for our volunteer appointed groups to make their own decision. So I think there's a good rationale to that. In that particular case, if we were to subscribe to that and the board agrees, the advertisement per se, Rick, wouldn't occur with it until we hear from all the ABCs. Jason indicated Parks and Rec, but we haven't heard from the others, so we're not going to be able to advertise anything until we hear from all the ABCs how they want to proceed, right? And then we have to customize the notice.
Unfortunately, if the board makes this decision, what it wants to do, we could advertise that. And then since the ABCs are currently meeting in Zoom, we could put that on their agenda for their next meeting, and then collectively, or at some point, we could get another ad to address what each ABC wants to do individually.
Okay.
So there's going to be a couple different ads, but it's not insurmountable.
Yeah. How do the other supervisors, John and David? I'm not sure. Is David with us again?
David's back. Yeah, he's back
Okay.
on.
Yeah, I'm back. I lost signal
All right.
in the valley. Sorry about that. So I'm back.
How do
And
you-
I'm good with I'm good with what was being proposed. I'm fine with that.
John?
I'm good. I'm trying to figure out what the resolution is going to sound like, Mike.
Yeah, the motion would be something in the order of move that the township, as it moves under the governor's direction to a return to normalcy, that the board would agree to allow each ABC to choose their own platform, if you will, or their own way to conduct the meetings for the balance of this year. I suppose, Rick, that would be just for the year. And that the Board of Supervisors going forward, beginning in June, would conduct one meeting in person and one via Zoom. Would be kind of the gist of the motion as far as I could hear it. Michelle, is that the
I think it sounds, so moved.
If I may, I would suggest that we, just because, why don't we have the first meeting in June Zoom,
Yes.
and then have the second meeting of the month, in-person meeting. That
In-person.
way.
And keep in
we're
mind that the
another month
second,
of vaccinations.
well,
and all
the
that
second meeting of the month is the long-range planning for June. So you actually have it June 1st, then June 8th, then you have another meeting scheduled for June 15th.
Oh, boy. I love
Yeah,
that.
There's 3 meetings in June.
I was
Wow.
actually, if I could just ask a question real quick, because I was actually, Susan actually hit the nail on the head of what I was going to ask.
Sure,
Because
Derek, go ahead.
some of the schedule I've seen going forward, there's a lot of budget meetings woven into the schedule as well.
Yeah.
So there might not, it seems like there's going to be quite a bit of meetings versus just the 2 meetings a month
Yeah.
throughout the rest of the year. So that might need to be considered as well.
That's a good point. How's that filter in?
Well, I mean, do you want to have those budget meetings, workshops in person, or do you want to do them via Zoom?
Did we talk about that when we saw the schedule as the potential to have them in person?
No.
Those meetings, other than the June 8th, you're up until, I guess, July. You got a couple months.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't start until
Rick-
September.
Rick, question, do we have to advertise the budget meetings?
No.
Yeah, the board has advertised, it's going to meet on every Tuesday. So the meeting's already advertised.
Right.
But
Right.
they're
That's-
advertised as being on Zoom. So
They're
if you
all
change
currently
it, yes.
advertised to be on
So-
Zoom.
So,
So for clarification, are we sunshine then for the advertisement all the way through June the 15th or beyond?
Right now, you're advertised for Zoom meetings until something changes.
Till the end of the, till the end of the year, till the end of the year, till the, yeah.
So
Okay.
your motion could be is that going forward, the second formal board meeting of the month, which is on the third Tuesday, going
Right.
forward will be a public meeting. And
We'll do
you
that.
let that go until September and then decide to revisit it.
What do you think of that?
Well, now, if we do advertise it that way, but then say something occurs in our environment, say there's a spike or something, and all of a sudden the governor issues something new and we got a pullback of some type. How does that all work, Rick? I hadn't really thought through that.
I think, Mike, at that point, I think there'd be a revolt.
Yeah,
I think you'd have to
how does-
Just to
how do-
re-advertise it.
Let's go back to the budget meetings. How are we going to advertise them?
They're already advertised. If the board, based on what Michelle stated, the only meeting that'll be in public meeting will be the second formal meeting of the month, will be the third Tuesday. All the other meetings could stay as Zoom.
Well, now slow up there. The budget meetings are which one are they going to be?
Well, the first one's going to be the long-range planning section on June 8th. And then we have scheduled budget meetings for either the first or fourth, the second or fourth Tuesday. And I believe they start in September.
Yes.
So if you just go with what Michelle suggested, that the second meeting of the month, the second formal meeting of the month is going to be a public meeting, that'll get you to September. And then at which time, so you'll have June, July, and August, formal meetings on the third Tuesday in person. And at that time, you can decide what do you want to do, after that.
Reevaluate it then.
I'm still trying to figure out the budget meetings.
They would
Are
be
they
in
in person or Zoom?
Zoom. But they don't, other than the one on June 8th, they're not going to happen until September. And at that time, you can decide whether or not you want to continue with Zoom or go back to full public meetings back.
All right, but a budget.
that's a good point. That's a good point. We have a couple
It is
months.
a good point. I'm just thinking we should have the budget meetings live. If we can.
I agree with you, John. Dealing with all the numbers in our interaction,
Yeah.
much more fluent and fluid when we're in person with that kind of detail and those kind of discussions. And hopefully Rick's right. I mean, we really start to dig in September, and maybe at that point we change it and we say we're going to do these in person in September. We advertise accordingly then.
Yeah.
Derek would be doing that at that point.
But you can make that decision in August.
Yeah. How about that?
All right. I'll second the motion.
Yeah, can you figure out that motion, Rick? I mean, we
I got it.
If you can write it, Rick, I'll second it.
Now, the effect is that the board is going to have formal in-person meetings for their meeting on June 15th,
Right.
July 20th,
Yes.
August 17th.
Yes.
All other meetings will be Zoom, and then at your meeting on the 17th, you'll figure out what, if anything, changes you want to make at that time.
Okay.
And then consistent with what we said about the ABCs, letting them make up their mind, and they'll report that back to us.
They'll report back, and then Susan can put the appropriate ads.
Give them, Rick, I would give them a deadline.
Well,
In their next meeting.
On their next
Decide,
agenda. Next meeting agenda.
Yeah.
And then get back to us.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Well,
I get to vote on that?
Derek, can you construct that motion for us? Thank you. Is there a second?
That's a tall task. I might lose my internet connection.
Wait a minute, you can't pull a David on this one.
Is there a second?
Let David give the motion.
There's a second from John Herzog. I hesitate to say any public comment, any further comment on this motion? Susan?
No, Mike, no.
Let's call the vote on it. Aye.
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 4-0.
Okay.
All right, good. Jason, thanks for getting us rolling there. Rick, thank you.
Of course.
Derek, thanks for your input there too. Let's see, we're on page 2 of the agenda. Acknowledge Park and Rec update. I saw this, acknowledging it, is there any questions on the summer programming updates that Jason has provided from the Parks and Recreation Department?
Oh, it looks great.
It does look
Yeah,
great.
I think I like the Oktoberfest theme, and the custom brew of the blacksmith shop brew, and the polka, classic polka during an Oktoberfest theme. I think that sounds, again, that's innovative stuff. I really like the way you constructed, Jason, and the Parks and Recreation Board.
It should be fun.
And also kudos to you, Jason, on your that you're going to be chairing the 75th anniversary Pennsylvania Recreation and Parks Society Conference at the Kalahari Resorts on March 21st to the 21st, or to the 24th rather. And you also recently were the end note speaker at the past March PRPS conference. So you're a recognized figure. We don't want you to get too much recognition because we like you right where you are here. But kudos to you anyway.
Of course. Yep. Thanks.
Anything else go ahead, Jason.
I just want to real quick recognize a couple of the partners on here. The Chester County Concert Band.
Yep.
Last year, they had nowhere to play, so I let them use the park for free because they had to do the social distancing thing. And so you can see in the picture, it was really cool. They made it happen. They wore their masks, but they still were able to play and practice and all that. And so this year, kind of as a gratitude to the township, they're going to play for us for free. That's in great. July, which I thought was really great.
Yeah.
Which is, we've known them for a bunch of years, and it's a really great win-win for them.
Yeah, it's a nice give and take. Nice give and take. That's really a great, pat on the back to each other. I think that's terrific.
Yep.
Jason, see if you can get Bruce Springsteen next year.
No.
I'll put it on my to-do.
You don't want the boss.
He's had some trouble with parks lately. I maybe
Yeah.
we could set him straight here. I
Too
don't
much.
know.
That's right.
He got off.
Especially
He was acquitted.
Oktoberfest, probably not a good idea.
He was, the boss was acquitted, though. He was acquitted.
Was he?
Yeah. So we're acknowledging this. We're acknowledging it. Any comments from the board on any of these other updates? There's no motion. It's just to recognize what Jason's got in front of us.
Everything looks great.
All
Thanks.
right,
It
Jason.
does.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, consider stormwater agreement for 1448 Patterson Lane. Anybody want to, if they don't have any comment, does anyone want to make a motion as
Yeah,
recommended by the staff?
Yeah, I'll move that the board authorize the chairman to sign the stormwater management operation and maintenance agreement for
Second.
1448 Patterson.
Yep, do we have a second?
Second the motion.
All right, any discussion on this matter? Anybody?
No, no, Mike.
Okay, then let's call the vote on that one. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Michelle is an aye.
We're all aye.
We're all aye. We're now we four, the zip. Let's see, any other matter? Consider State Historic Preservation Office Phase 1 Archaeologic Study, Paoli Pike Trail. Yeah, this one kind of got under my bonnet.
Yeah.
Why?
That was
you know,
that was a shocker.
what triggered this? What triggered us now having to invest $17,000 more for this study? Did we receive a notification or a warrant, or warrant letter for this, and a rationale as to why, or anything, Mark?
Yeah, so segment B is going through its phases of reviews through the DEP and our joint permit with the Corps of Engineers. Because we're going through the wetlands and crossing the wetlands, we've got to get a phase, we've got to get a joint permit, DEP and the Corps. So of course, all the state agencies get their shot at it, and they came back, SHPO got a look at it and came back with their comments, and they'd like, they want to do a study because it's farmland. It has their theory is it hasn't been developed or developed or shaped with equipment, that there could be some archaeological artifacts in this area. So as a requirement of the permit, we have to do the survey, and that survey consists of approximately 60 shovel dug holes along segment B, which is basically in the area of the Hicks farm. So just from the creek up through across the farm along Paoli Pike. So McMahon got that word from SHPO, and it came back in one of the review comments. So Lotus Environmental put together a proposal and $17,000 for the survey. They're going to do research. They'll do lab testing and screening of all the dirt, refill the holes, write a report, and submit it.
I'm a bit ignorant on the process. Is there any? Could we make a cogent appeal on something like this? I mean, it's costing us $17,000 for there. It seems to me, unless there was a warrant, a specific reason why they're asking for this, that they're just taking a pot shot at us. And it annoys me to no end when these agencies from afar just apply their agency rules that they've contrived. And they don't recognize the financial impact it has on municipalities. Is there some historical basis that there could be something there of note that they're pressing us with a $17,000 price tag for digging holes and sifting through some dirt? Is there any basis that we can appeal it, or any history behind it that says the rationale for requiring us to do this?
So McMahon, we asked the same questions of McMahon, and they said that based on the review letter, it was Chippo's opinion that a phase one was required or should be conducted to locate potentially significant resources based on their concern that the existing topographic setting of farmland, the soil type, and slope and proximity to water. So those things combined was enough for them to determine it's a good place to study. There could be something there. So
Peruvian artifacts or Colombian statues, maybe?
maybe Peruvian, I don't know.
Gold trinkets brought up by the
Yeah,
Spanish? I don't
yeah.
know. I
Don't
mean,
think the Spanish got this far north, but
I don't
you
think
know,
they did either.
Atlantis.
You used the word should, Mark. Is that
I
the way
did.
the letter is written, should, or is it should?
well, that's what McMahon put in their letter to us. So I don't know how it was
It's
specifically.
it's a federal requirement under the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966.
So we don't have it.
Right, and we're subject to the act.
Yeah.
So now we can write our. Mike, you're old enough to remember they used to tell you, well, write your congressman.
Yeah, I know. I hear.
So we could write our congressman, and I'm sure it'll jump right to the top of the pile, and they'll fix the law for us. But
Well, we have it before us. I mean, if we're going to move forward, I respect members of the board who are concerned about the trail and the expenses. It pains me to be the one to, and there are only 4 of us here, and knowing some of the history of some of the votes, and that's not it's just factual, nothing else. There's no other comment. I'm not sure we're going to get a vote tonight. I would make the motion that we accept the proposal and proceed with the $17,400 expense. And I don't know whether there will be a second to that motion.
I'll second it, Mike.
And there's a second. Is there any discussion with that motion on the table?
It's another expenditure and it's unexpected. I think that McMahon should bite that bullet myself.
No, it's not part of the scope of their project. Anticipated. It's never typically a line item in a proposal for something like this. They don't have the money.
Okay. A good try, Michelle, but I don't think that they would.
I even asked them, I said, is there enough in the kitty left over? Because we've shifted some money over, and they said no. And I looked, and we got about $7,000 in there for the final essentials, final tweaks to the permit application to get it in. So there's not enough in there.
I'll take $7,000.
Yeah. Well, is there? There's a motion and there's a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll just call the question. Call the vote. Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
So it's 2-2, so there is no action on it. We will have to bring this up in another meeting when we've got a full board to see if that changes the vote, Mark and Rick.
Okay.
All right, thanks folks for that one. Let's see, how about go ahead, John.
I'll just make a public comment that I voted in favor of it, but I think it's total BS.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. I agree 100%. They're milking us with their agency rules, and it is a very frustrating thing when we get caught with that, particularly when we have concerns amongst board members with the expenditures to begin with. But I think that involves all of us this time, and I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, 8 years ago, when they were going to put the cell tower at the Wawa, this same act enabled us to intervene and prevent the cell tower going up at the Wawa.
That can work both ways. I get you.
On one hand, you feed the dog, the other hand,
I get it. All right.
Cell tower is ugly.
Thank
all that. They were going to put a cell tower at the Wawa. And because of this act, the township was able to get in, and we were argued that because it would impact the
You should.
the Goshenville Historic District, they ended up going away. And so again, it's the same act. On one hand, it's again the same act. One hand it fed us, and the other hand is biting us.
Yeah.
And now we got a cell tower on township property that produces revenue for the township.
And you're gonna tell me that the Wawa is okay in the historic district, because I guess it's a historic Wawa.
Exactly.
Well, no,
Oh, Wawa was not, that property owner is not happy that we fought that and lost it and pulled it up.
I believe that.
Oh, they lost revenue. That's right. They lost revenue.
Yeah, about 70 grand a year.
Yeah, that's a lot of cups of coffee.
It's the fact that there's a federal permit involved, and that's what triggers it. Well,
Yeah, so-
again, we had to do the same. Well, we went through the same process at Hershey's Mill,
Yeah.
and to a limited extent, the same thing at the reservoir at Milltown. So it is
So
what it is.
I'll have it on your agenda for their next meeting.
All right, Mark. At this point in time, open it up to any public comment.
Wait a minute, Mike. I have another matter, please.
Oh, yeah, sure, John.
Because of schedule conflicts and the time I'm putting in on other committees,
yes.
I'm really not able to spend the time on the business park task force that I should. I feel bad about that, but there's only so much time.
That happens. Schedule conflicts and pressing matters otherwise. That's why we have to be flexible as board members and respect each other's schedules, which are part of, our schedules with the township activities as well as our own personal schedules. We only have so much time to do things. So I respect that, John.
I would be
Michelle?
willing to pick up the slack there if I can help out in any way.
So Michelle, you'd be willing to serve and fill in that vacancy, if you will, for John on the Business Park Task Force?
Yeah. John, do you think that if I stepped away from Conservancy, you could fill that in?
I think that would be easier for me. Yeah,
So
if
I'm
that's
gonna
okay
step
with the
down
rest
from
of the board.
Conservancy then. For
Okay,
the time being.
okay.
Don't get me wrong. I love that. I love that. I love that group of people. They're fantastic. You'll
Yeah,
enjoy.
yeah.
Now you have two meetings tomorrow night at the same time, John.
Well,
Welcome to
I
my
have two
world.
computers.
I'll actually send an email and copy you on it, John, and I'll let them know the updates for the liaison report and introduce you at the same time.
All right. Well, for you to know, Mike is already a part of the Business Park Task Force.
I know. I know. I got to work with him.
Boy,
And so, yeah, and so is David.
well, David is not a member of the Business
Not a
Park
member,
Task Force, but we're trying to bring him along at different times because he's very influential and he's a very interesting guy. But David, you're all right with that that kind of switch with John and Michelle?
Yeah, I think the motion has to be that Michelle is resigning from Conservancy, John is resigning from the task force, and then we're voting to appoint John to the Conservancy and appoint Michelle to the Business Park Task Force.
That's well put. I would second that.
There you go.
Call the question.
Any no comment further, I believe. And okay, so I would call the vote in question on that one.
Aye.
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 What is it? Okay, switcheroo, it worked very smoothly and seamlessly. I think that Michelle, maybe Mark Gordon can bring you up to snuff a bit with the Business Park Task Force, and you and I'll talk. And we're meeting, it's the first Monday of the month, Mark, I think is when we're meeting, correct?
It is the first Monday evening of the month at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, so between Mark and I, before that meeting, we'll exchange, share some thoughts with you and
Yeah, and there's several documents that I can get to you too, Michelle, that we're
Okay.
working off of a contact list, and you'll have to absorb all John's contacts there, so
No problem.
squared away.
And the other thing is, I mean, you've been very active on this and really appreciate it. You might want to, you may be able to get a tour, if you will, of the couple of business parks. I know Rick did that with me previously and gave me some insights as we went past some of the buildings, et cetera. That may be something between now and June's meeting that.
Another field trip, Michelle.
Yeah, another
Sounds good
field
to
trip.
me. I'm up for it, no problem.
I would say if I could,
Dunkin' coffees.
if I could participate in something like that too.
Absolutely,
Oh,
Derek.
great.
Yep.
Somebody new, I would like to do that as well.
Yeah, good, Derek. Good. Glad you said that. So maybe you guys will be able to arrange that.
Coordinate with Mark.
Yeah, and you know, let me know when you do it because we won't be able to socially distance, but well, that's the other issue too, isn't it? Just you know, everybody. How about you, Derek? Are you vaccinated at this point?
I'm fully.
I am. I actually got the Johnson & Johnson and I survived. So.
Oh, good. So everybody, we're all vaccinated,
Yeah.
but you know, I might want to join you on that if you decide, but I don't want to crowd the ship either under all the circumstances, but that'd be good for you guys to do. All right, good.
I'm pretty sure that was a HIPAA violation, Mike.
Yeah, you can't
Yes,
ask. People
yes.
aren't vaccinated.
You can ask. You're allowed to ask.
Yeah, that's
You don't have to
I
answer.
know. I violate something every day, I'm sure. Public comment. I don't know that we have any members of the public on at this.
There's one member who I don't know who it is with phone number ending in 856.
Any
They're
public
muted.
comment?
I would say no, Mike, they're
Okay.
not unmuting, so.
All right. Liaison reports, we have none listed on the agenda. So correspondence of interest, we all got copies of the State Liquid Fuels 2019 audit. Everything looks to me to be in good order. They had a couple little minor items, no omissions or anything serious. As usual, the books are in good shape. So if you saw that, that's an acknowledgement. Do we post that online? Do we put those audits on our website?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's available on the website if anybody wanted to look at it. And it's that wonderful time of the night, unless there's any other business.
I'm going to make a motion that we adjourn, and I think that David will probably appreciate that.
Yes,
I would second it, actually.
Oh, great.
go.
Aye.
Board members, I guess we'll see each other tomorrow night. We will see each other in person tomorrow.
In person tomorrow.
Okay, and I don't know who else will be there, but we'll be there, and it'll be fun to know that we actually exist in the flesh, you know.
Yes.
And David, drive safely.